How about that prick's face when he saw the gat?
Hi there, quick update. I haven't uploaded a video on YouTube in about 4 years because I've had a lot less free time and I lost a bit of motivation. But now I've got some more time on my hands and I've got some more motivation to start uploading again. In the 4 years I've been gone, I've gone through a lot of changes myself, reflected on the channel, and I think it's time to revamp it a bit maybe, you know. So for now my channel used to be, there'll be a lot of differences in the coming future. I plan to upload some more gaming videos, bring back a series I made one video on and then never again. I've also got a fair amount of shorts that I'm probably gonna make, got a lot of gaming clips I got over the years, so I'm going to upload some of those. Don't know how I'm going to do that exactly, because last time I uploaded shorts didn't exist, shorts wasn't a thing on YouTube, so I'm going to try and do a bit of experimenting with that, see how that goes, but I just thought I'd give a quick update for anyone who knew my channel beforehand. But yeah, on to the video. In the horror genre of movies, there's a lot of films out there to try and get a franchise going off the ground. Most aren't successful, but some are. Some instances are, the Alien movies, Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
try anything and you're canceled, bro.
The Ring,
Get up, you little ugly bitch!
Killer Pinata.
What the hell's going on out here?
Nope.
Saw,
Your final service. 你手臂夠都有放。Oh hell no！ 有嘢對住最深。
and Scream.
baby.
All notable examples. Two other notable successful franchises in this genre are the Conjuring series and the Child's Play series. Both these franchises involve films with possessed dolls. The Child's Play series basically revolves around a doll called Chucky who is possessed by a murderer. The Conjuring franchise is a trilogy based on the Annabelle doll, which is said to be possessed by a demon. The original Child's Play film was released in 1988 and the first Annabelle film was released in 2014. Whilst Child's Play wasn't the first film to have possessed dolls in it, it was the first to base the entire concept of the film on it. Whilst far apart in release dates, the success of these two films has shown that the concept of possessed dolls captures the intrigue of the audience, creating a large demand in the film market. Because of this success, a lot of films started being released based entirely on this concept as well, and as the years went on, more films about this concept kept popping up, saturating the market, making it harder to tell one film from the other. However, out of all these films, there is one that stands out to me, and that film is titled The Boy. On a surface level, the film doesn't seem to be like all the others, but the more you watch it, the more that doesn't seem to add up until the final act of the film, which subverts your expectations and makes you pick up a lot more on the second watch of the film, and make you appreciate it more. The film did well enough for it to have spawned a sequel, and whilst the first film did an amazing job at subverting your expectations on the concept of possessed dolls, the second film basically retconned the entire idea of the first film, making it another bland, run-of-the-mill, possessed doll movie. But to understand how much of the second film deconstructed the concept of the first film, we have to go into detail about what makes the first film so good. The Boy was released in February 2016, directed by William Brent Bell and written by Stacey Menner. Bell has directed a total of 9 films, which include Stay Alive, The Devil Inside, Where, The Boy Movies, Separation, Orphan, First Kill, and Lord of Misrule. He is also set to direct a third Orphan film, which is currently in pre-production at the time of recording. Menner has also written in 3 films, including The Boy Movies and Mixtape. She is set to write for an upcoming film that is currently classed as Untitled Border Town Thriller, which is in the pre-production stage. I don't know about you, but I have no idea what that film could be about. The Boy had a budget of $10 million and grossed $10.8 million at its opening weekend and $64.2 million total worldwide. Lauren Cohan stars as Greta, who is hired to be a nanny to an English elderly couple's son Brahms. I said English because Greta's American and I assume this film was predominantly seen in America. Cohan has starred in many TV shows including multiple The Walking Dead shows, Supernatural, The Vampire Diaries and Invincible. She also played Martha Wayne in Batman vs Superman. Interesting fun fact there. Before meeting the couple, she meets Malcolm played by Rupert Evans, who delivers the groceries to the house. Evans isn't really known for much outside of Hellboy and The Man in the High Castle. They hit it off pretty well and seem to have good chemistry, but hey, this is a horror film. This film's not going to be focused on that aspect. She then meets the elderly woman Mrs. Hilscher, played by Diana Hardcastle, who takes Greta to see Mr. Hilscher, played by Jim Norton, who is seen first talking to Brahms with his back facing the camera, so we can only see the bottom half and the hair of Brahms. They then reveal Brahms, who turns out to be a doll, not a real child. How frightening. Greta then chuckles at the reveal, met with a puzzled look from the elderly couple. Greta is even more confused when she sees Malcolm greet Brahms with a handshake, as if it's normal. Greta then follows suit by doing the same as Malcolm and greeting herself. Mrs. Hilscher begins to show Greta around the house and makes a weird comment saying, Brahms has rejected a lot of nannies, but they weren't nearly as young or as pretty as you. It's a very weird thing to say and catches you off guard a bit, but makes sense later on. But we'll get to that. Mr. and Mrs. Hilscher then explain some rules and duties Greta must follow and be aware of. For looking after a doll, the duties seem a bit silly, like waking him up and changing his clothes, to make sure he does 3 hours of learning 5 days a week. And throughout learning these rules, there are some odd specifics that Greta has to abide by. For example, when Brahms, or rather Greta, puts on music, it must be loud, as Brahms likes it loud. And food must not be thrown away when finished with meals. We're only 15 minutes into the film, and it seems like the elderly couple are delusional, believing their son is real, or still alive. Judging by some portraits we see earlier on in the movie, Brahms looks like a real boy in them. Either the parents wanted Brahms to look like a real boy, or he was a real boy, but died or went missing, and they had the doll to cope with the trauma and loss of their child. The reason I say this instead of just Brahms being a doll is because the line Mr. Hilscher says, saying, "Our son is here. He is very much with us." If it was just a doll and there was no real child, I'd think, yeah, stupid, I know he's here. Your wife left him in the study. I think this guy might be losing it. In the next scene, we learn that Greta is going to be doing this job for about 3 months and is being paid a certain amount, but whatever. She needs it because of her situation. Honestly, if I was being paid and had to follow these rules stated, given the right pay, and I assume it's a lot based on the house and the couple, I'd follow these rules to a T. But Greta did say there's no Wi-Fi or phone service here, so my doom scrolling days would be over. Greta's friend mentions a man named Cole who's looking for Greta. He seems to be an ex from an abusive partner based on the Sinister X music playing faintly in the background, and the fact that Greta's friend mentions that there's a restraining order against him. The next morning, Greta hears Mrs. Hilscher getting angry at Brahms for leaving a mess in his room. It seems a bit strange, since again, he's just a doll. Mr. Hilscher emphasises the importance of keeping to the rules, since Brahms is a special and unique case when it comes to children. As the couple depart for a holiday, Mrs. Hilscher embraces Greta and whispers, "I'm so sorry," and then leaves. Says "I'm so sorry," refuses to elaborate, leaves. What did she mean by this? After the couple leave, Greta sits Brahms in a chair and covers his face. And fair play to her, she's getting paid to babysit a delusional couple's child doll. And then she starts unpacking her suitcase, and I only mention this because who in the hell packs peanut butter in a suitcase? That's not an American exclusive. We Brits have peanut butter too. We are not stuck living on rations. We are cultured. She also packs jam with her. Why? Does she think that peanut butter and jam just don't exist outside the US? Like, we can make things too. We are not stupid. After doing some reading and falling asleep, Greta wakes up to find the cover covering Brahms has fallen off. And it's not like it just fell off, the way it was placed made sure of it, so something, or someone, manually took the cover off. During the night, Greta wakes up and hears a child laughing or crying. Couldn't really tell because it's quite faint, and then gets up to see where it's coming from. Honestly, I'd be tweaking if I was her. If I'm alone in a big fuck off house, I'm staying where I am. I'm not about to find out if the 3M challenges are real. Anyway, Greta sees a portrait of the family of the Hilschers, and a jump scare where a hand pops out of the painting grabbing Greta's neck, and then she wakes up for real. That was all just a dream sequence. She sees Brahms crying, which is strange because, you know, he's a doll. I feel like I'll be saying the word doll a lot during this movie, I don't know. Only to find out the ceiling is leaking right where Brahms is sitting. To find out the source, she tries to get into the loft, but can't for some reason, like it's been shut with superglue. Later that night, Greta gets a call from someone who's just breathing down the end of the line. Freaky boy. Malcolm arrives in the morning and shows Greta Brahms' grave after she asks why the doll exists. So it's now confirmed that Brahms died in the fire, and the grave shows that Brahms died at the age of 8. So parents never got to see their child mature and cope by looking after a doll as if it's Brahms, never having to deal with the fact that he's dead. Malcolm suggests taking Greta out to town since she's in the middle of nowhere. She agrees and gets ready to go out later on. As she's getting ready, she sees that Brahms is in the same spot, but his head is tilted so that he's looking into Greta's room. Greta then gets into the shower, leaving her dress and necklace that she's going to wear on the chair and sink. As she's in the shower, her dress and chain are seen to get taken by someone, or something, at a child's height. As she then checks her hair in the mirror after the shower, she sees that some of her hair has clearly been cut off. It seems as if something dubious is happening in this household here.
A dubious little creature getting up to mischief. This is no good.
As Greta is looking for her lost possessions, she sees the ladder to the attic has dropped down and the attic is open. She goes up there with a stick used to open the attic. As she gets to the attic, it closes on her and she gets stuck in there. Through a window she sees Malcolm pull up to the house and waiting for her. I want to say though, Malcolm is the most impatient man I've ever seen. He knocks on the door, not very loudly mind you, and then waits about 30 seconds before he gets back in his car and leaves. It's a massive house, it's not like an apartment. It probably takes Greta about 30 seconds just to walk down the stairs. Anyway, Malcolm leaves, and as Greta tries to find her way around the attic in the dark, she sees a silhouette of a person, falls back, trips on a chair, and passes out. She wakes up in the morning and sees the silhouette was just a hung-up suit. Greta then stumbles upon an album filled with mainly pictures of Brahms. As she does this, the ladder to the loft falls down and she is able to get back out again. Greta then enters her room only to find the place a mess with clothes thrown everywhere, whereas last time we saw it, it was neatly tidied. Malcolm then comes over presumably after Greta called him about the night before, and then they find out the ladder to the loft is quite sensitive to folding back up and closing. So someone didn't close the loft on Greta, ladder just sort of did that. Malcolm then delves more into Brahms over a game of pool. He admits that people thought he was a weird child, which was alluded to before the Hilshers left on holiday. Malcolm says even Brahms' dad thought he was odd. We then get some backstory about the relationship between Greta and Cole, and that apparently he took a lot from her. It's not stated what that is, time or money, but it was a lot. But also that Cole knows where Greta is because he wouldn't stop berating one of her friends. He supposedly wants to just deliver a letter to her and apologise. The next day she sees Brahms sitting upright on the bed instead of lying down where she left him. In a panic, she goes to the phone only for it not to work. However, it rings, and on the other end is a child's voice asking Greta why she doesn't want to play and why she doesn't follow the rules. Afterwards she sees a sandwich left outside her door which she definitely didn't make. Next, we cut to the Hilshers on their holiday. They finish writing a letter to Brahms and then head to a shore. Walking down the shore they pick up stones and put them in their pockets. Then they walk into the sea with the stones in their pockets dragging them down, not allowing them to resurface, keeping them down there. After that, we see Greta start following the rules in hopes of having things return to normal if she does what she's instructed to do. Malcolm then arrives and invites Greta out to town. She turns him down believing that if she left Brahms alone everything would get a bit crazy. Even so, as Greta goes to throw some food away, where she only turns her back to Brahms for a few seconds, he's moved from his chair and out into the hallway. Next we see Greta has called Malcolm back to the house in hopes of showing him that the doll is alive. Obviously some time has passed since Greta is less distraught and more excited about proving the doll is alive to someone other than herself. She's also a bit relieved that she knows she's not going insane as she's marked where Brahms is sitting on the floor to only come back later and see that he's moved. But when she shows Malcolm, Brahms doesn't move. She asks Brahms to do it for her, and to her and Malcolm's surprise, he does move. Malcolm is shocked at first, but then they start theorising what could possibly be moving the doll to different places when he's left alone. Greta then reveals she was once pregnant and lost a child. Greta says it's because of Cole that she lost it. She never states explicitly what Cole did, but she did say he just went off again, implying some form of domestic abuse. Greta believes that the loss of her child brought her to this job and looking after Brahms because she knows it ties her to the Hilshers. Greta and Malcolm then share a kiss, and as Greta sets Brahms to bed, she and Malcolm start making out, but before they get to anything, Brahms moves downstairs and starts playing loud music. This obviously sets off the mood for the two adults. Malcolm then tells Greta that Brahms used to play with this girl called Emily when he was alive, but she went missing her and her body was found later in the woods with her skull crushed. When the police wanted to question Brahms, that's when the fire that killed Brahms was started. Malcolm states that the killer was never found, but we can imply who her killer was. Greta then revisits the loft and finds pictures of Emily and Brahms together, with Brahms looking like he had some sort of disdain for Emily. After doing some chores around the garden, Greta walks back inside to hear some noises coming from the pool room. She knows it can't be Brahms because he's been with her the entire time. When she goes to investigate, she finds a strange man that she recognises almost instantly. Cole. Greta and Cole sit down for a meal, Cole hoping to get back with Greta after everything that's happened. He also states he's working on a hotel and has enough work to earn him some money so that Greta won't have to worry financially. Cole then hands 2 plane tickets saying he and Greta can leave tomorrow, if she so pleases. Straight after, Malcolm enters the house, therefore meeting Cole. Cole asks Malcolm what he thinks of the doll situation, where Malcolm responds saying, "I don't like getting into other people's business," whilst glaring at Cole, implying he's referring to him. As Malcolm leaves, Cole asks if he should be worried, hoping that Greta isn't going out with him. As Cole and Greta get ready for bed, where Cole is given blankets for the sofa, he says he just wants Greta to forgive him for what he did, but she says she's unable to. This leads Cole to getting more confrontational, grabbing Greta's arm, saying she can't leave him and he won't let her no matter how far away she goes, and to be packed ready to leave by morning. Once Greta has put Brahms to bed, she's shown asking for his help, in obviously getting rid of Cole and out of the house. Once everyone's sleeping, including Malcolm who's still at the house, just outside in his car, it cuts to Cole where blood starts dripping on his forehead. We then cut to Greta where we can hear Cole shouting for her. Cole is frustrated with her with what has been done. There are dead birds in his luggage and the words "Get Out" written on the wall. That's another good movie. Anyway, Cole thinks Greta has done this because he obviously doesn't know that Brahms moves on his own and he was asleep the whole time, so anything could have happened. Cole plays along with the idea that Brahms did it as to not make Greta upset. Because of that though, he asks Greta to hand over the doll, which she refuses to. This then leads to a loud argument to which Malcolm wakes up. Malcolm enters the house to see Greta thrown to the floor. Malcolm shouts at Cole to leave the house, and in a fit of rage, Cole grabs the hold of Brahms and smashes the head of the doll on a chair. This then causes the house to creak and sounds like something is breaking around the house. Whatever it is that's moving around the house, it's heading towards the three characters. As it stops moving and making sound, Cole puts his ear up to the mirror, and before he can report what he believes, the mirror smashes, sending Cole flying backwards. From the broken mirror reveals a passageway into the walls, and a figure steps out, Brahms, as an adult, much older than his doll counterpart. Now this is the big twist of the film, and there's a lot to talk about, but there's only about 15 minutes left of the film, so I'll just get through this and we can talk about the twist later on. Brahms then throws Malcolm out of the way and starts to strangle Cole. As he's strangling him, Brahms picks up a piece of shattered doll and shoves it into Cole's neck, causing him to bleed out and die. No more abusive boyfriend. I used to pray for days like this. Brahms then grabs Greta, only for Malcolm to come from behind and smash Brahms over the head with a bat, knocking him to the ground. As Malcolm and Greta go to leave, Brahms gets in their way, leading them to going upstairs and locking themselves in Greta's bedroom. Brahms then enters the walls and gets to the two of them by entering the bedroom via the closet. Malcolm then hits Brahms over the head with the telephone. The two then get out of the room and move into another, finding a passageway in the walls and go through there to escape Brahms. Whilst in the walls looking for a way out, they stumble into a secret room, which is obviously where Brahms has been living fit with everything you need. Greta is creeped out by this doll that is laying on the bed that is obviously meant to be her, as it is wearing her missing dress. On the desk is the note that the Hilshers left to Brahms, stating that they won't come back. As the two begin moving again through the walls, Brahms breaks through the walls and knocks out Malcolm. Then Brahms speaks to Greta in a childlike voice, showcasing that any child speaking or laughing throughout the film has always been Brahms. But then as he keeps speaking, his voice begins to crack, showing he's an adult and just wants to stay a child, begging Greta he'll be good if she stays. As Greta escapes, Brahms shouts at her to come back, otherwise he'll kill Malcolm. As Greta runs away, she turns back, knowing she can't just leave Malcolm. As she re-enters the house, she picks up a weapon and hides it in her back pocket. When she sees Brahms, she tells him it's time for bed, hoping that his childlike mind and affection for Greta will make him obey her demands. Crazily enough, it works, and Brahms heads to bed. As Greta leans in to give a goodnight kiss, she stabs him with the weapon she picked up. With this, Brahms reacts violently, throwing Greta against the wall and strangling her. As Greta is being strangled, she reaches for the weapon lodged in Brahms' torso, and she digs it deeper into Brahms. He then lets go of Greta, and they both fall to the floor. As Greta escapes, we pan to see that half the mask of Brahms is broken, showing a burned face, showcasing that the fire was real, and Brahms was definitely in it, but he survived and hid instead of dying. Speaking of dying, Brahms does that. Greta goes to find Malcolm, and they both escape in his car, leaving the house for good. As it fades out on the two characters, it cuts back to the house, with the Brahms doll being put together back by Brahms from the looks of it, and that's where the movie ends. Apologies for it being as long as it was and detailed as it was. I need to showcase a lot about the movie and explain the clever writing for the movie and the twist, and then why the sequel ruins this film's concept. Before saying anything about Brahms, I just want to mention that the adult version of Brahms is played by James Russell, which hasn't done much in terms of films or television. The Boy is his biggest film to date. Whilst this video is heavily based around the concept and twist of the movie, I do want to take some time to talk about Brahms as a character, as I believe whilst he's around only about 15 minutes of screen time, he is one of the biggest pillars of this film. I like Brahms, the person, as a character. In my opinion, he's the best part about this movie and what makes it more terrifying. Whilst his strength gives him a major advantage over everyone already, that combined with his psyche makes him even more formidable foe. He's broken, unpredictable, and psychotic. It's heavily implied he killed Emily at an early age, so at his current age, there's nothing stopping him from killing everyone in the house. Even though he's shown to have some affection towards Greta, there's nothing actually stopping him from attacking her, which is shown later on when he's provoked. Brahms going from going in with murderous intent to Greta putting him to bed, you just don't know if or when he will strike, because now that he's revealed himself, he's got nothing to lose. The way Brahms moves through walls hides him from the cast and sort of blends into the house. A lot of houses in the UK were built decades, if not centuries ago, so a large amount of creaking in a house that big wouldn't really be seen as unusual. Hell, I hear creaks in my house when people just toss over in bed, so it's not hard to imagine just hearing general creaks throughout the house. I don't know what it's like for Americans, because their houses are a lot more modern to a majority of UK houses, so Greta's reaction to some of the creaking may be how some Americans react to a regular creaking in a house like that. I think it's also a nice touch that Brahms has a connection with the doll itself. He needs the doll, which I think can add to his already erratic nature. The doll acts as a way to mediate between characters like Greta and the Hilshers to Brahms. His cracked mind doesn't allow him to comprehend them talking to him directly, but through the doll. And I think with a lot of paranormal trope films coming out in the same decade, the way the doll doesn't move due to unnatural reasons has a good explanation behind it. The doll moves because Brahms does, and wants Greta to notice and become more complacent and obedient with the rules that were established earlier on. As I've mentioned many times before, Brahms is not all up there, he's got more than a few screws loose. But I don't think I've ever seen a character like Brahms on the screen before. He's not a slasher villain like Jason or Michael Myers.
Oh, behave!
He's not a twisted psychopath like Hannibal Lecter. He lives in walls, not like Norman Bates.
I am a surgeon! I am a surgeon! I am a surgeon! I am a surgeon! I am a surgeon!
He's something unique. I've seen articles mention characters like Brahms in books, but nothing on the big screen. And I don't think Brahms is just Brahms by himself. I think it takes the characters around him and the setting to be the unsettling twisted man that he is. I think if you put him in a different setting, it would be different and he wouldn't be so intimidating. I could definitely see him just being a background character in an Outlaws game or something. I think it's hard to get a character like that down to the T, which is why I don't think we'll see such a character like him for some time. I don't mean the exact character in a different movie, but something as unsettling as him. A character that talks about will talk the talk, like how it's implied that he killed Emily and was an unusual child, but will also walk the walk when it comes to him finally being on screen. Upon first viewing this film, I was genuinely surprised by the twist when it was first revealed. The first time around, you're more focused on the characters throughout the film. Whilst the film is in the horror genre, and rightfully so, the way the characters interact, mainly Greta and Malcolm, it feels very natural and slowly take your attention from Brahms and the challenges within the house, unless the characters bring those challenges to centre stage, like when Greta asks Brahms the doll to move to prove she isn't insane. Although, it is controversial if the twist the first time around is surprising or not, as viewers are roughly split down the middle of whether they figured out the twist or not. I think a big factor in this decision is when the viewer watched the film. I watched it on Netflix, hadn't really heard about it before, and just decided to give it a watch. Others who heard about the film beforehand may have seen some of the marketing, which may have implied that there was more to the doll and hinted at Brahms, the person, being involved. I think another big thing that some horror and thriller fans may have picked up on is the amount of foreshadowing in the film. Upon a rewatch, you realise there is a lot of foreshadowing. Not everyone picked up on it. A lot of viewers debate that whilst there is a lot of clues to pick up on, there's just enough to not make you suspect the twist in the film. Most, if not all, the foreshadowing is within the rules given to Greta at the start of the film. Some of the foreshadowing includes read loud and clear, music must be loud, uneaten food to not be thrown away, rat traps set outside so they don't enter the walls, and what Mr. Hilscher said. Quite literal when you think about it now. And personally, I think they move away from it quickly before you register the reasons for these rules. You're too busy focused on the rules that you overlook or stop to think about why. But now knowing that Brahms is in the rules don't seem outlandish if you're going to stay there if you don't meddle with it. I enjoyed this movie. As I've said before, I thought it was a good twist, and whilst the story wasn't a masterpiece, it was definitely one of the better horror films I've watched. When I finished watching the movie, I thought it was conclusive enough where it wouldn't warrant another movie. However, when I heard a sequel to The Boy called Brahms The Boy 2 was coming out soon, my interest got the better of me when it was released. I went to the cinema to watch the film, and based on the title of this video and what I've said before, I guess you can already know where this is going.
Boy, look at me! Look at me, boy! Boy!
Brahms The Boy 2 was released in February 2020, again directed by William Brent Bell and written by Stacey Menner. The Boy 2 was also made with a $10 million budget, just like the first film. The film grossed $5.7 million on its opening weekend and $20.3 million worldwide, less than a third of what the first film made overall. And, fun fact, this film was the last film produced by Lakeshore Entertainment before they were shut down their film division and sold their category of films later the same year. The film stars Katie Holmes as Liza and Christopher Convery as her son Jude. Katie Holmes has been in some notable films like Ocean's 8, Batman Begins, and Jack and Jill.
Get enough of my Dunkachino. Kids from 7 to 17 lining up for my Dunkachino.
She also played as one of the main characters in the TV show Dawson's Creek. Christopher Convery hasn't been in anything notable aside from Gotham, where he played a character called Martin, but that seems like a small role. Whilst both are American or have American accents at the least, the beginning of this film takes place in London, and that's mostly likely due to the fact of Liza's husband and Jude's dad Sean, played by Owen Yeaman.
Who's gonna be my celebrity phone call? Tom Holland! Man, what the fuck? Man, I don't want to talk, yo, bitch.
Yeman played a main character in the TV show The Mentalist and had some other minor roles in shows like Supergirl and The Cleveland Show. He was also apparently in the first Boys movie, unless he was part of the other crew aside from the acting, but I don't know what he was doing there. I have nothing to point out yet because we're only 3 minutes into the movie, but oh my lord, look at that wallpaper in Jude's room. I don't even know what the point or any references are, it's just downright creepy. That puppet in the top right looks even weirder than the puppet from Five Nights at Freddy's. Liza wakes up in the middle of the night to hear some cluttering from downstairs. She checks Jude's room to see if he's there, and once she sees he's not there, she checks downstairs believing Jude's playing another prank on her. But when she goes downstairs, she sees Jude hiding mere seconds before she's attacked by 2 burglars. Jude hits the alarm and Liza gets hit on the head by one of the robbers and collapses to the ground in front of Jude. Honestly, you could replace this scene with the robbery scene from the first John Wick film. Just replace Jude with the dog.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
5 months after the robbery, the attack on Liza has caused Jude to go mute. He's seeing a therapist, but the therapist also comments about the relationship between Liza and Sean, implying that their relationship took a hit after the robbery too. Sean suggests moving to a quieter area that might help Jude recover more and might help Liza with her nightmares, as she's been getting a lot of those since the robbery. Just before entering the house, Jude spots what looks like to be a hunter in the front garden. This is Joseph, played by Ralph Ineson. Ineson? I don't know how to pronounce that. You might have seen him before because out of the entire cast, I think Ineson has probably the biggest career, being in films like the live adaptation of The Jungle Book, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1, Kingsman and the Secret Service, The Last Jedi, Ready Player One, Guardians of the Galaxy, Nosferatu, and the new Fantastic Four. He was also in Lord of Misrule, which was another film directed by William Brent Bell if you remember. He also starred in many TV shows including Game of Thrones, the UK version of The Office, Chernobyl, Peaky Blinders, Merlin, and Ludwig. The family go for a little exploration in the forest near the new house. Whilst looking around, they stumble upon the main house. By main house I mean the house they bought used to be a guest house of the area. And that main house turns to be the house from the first film. What a surprise. Whilst Liza and Sean look around the house, Jude goes a bit further into the forest after hearing a voice and digs up the doll Brahms. It's not stated how long it's been since the first film, but at the end of the first film, Brahms seems to be putting the doll back together delicately. So I don't know if he put the doll out in the forest for some reason, or tried to start a new life, or if it's just been so long he just happened to get there. The family take the Brahms doll back to the house and get him cleaned up, as Jude wants to keep him. They do mention that the doll's been broken before and has been put back together, you know, because that happened in the first film. At night, as the family go upstairs for bed, Liza looks back at Brahms, who's been sat in a chair, looking directly at her through the mirror. But when she checks, instead of looking through the mirror, he's looking straight forward, not at her anymore. As Liza heads upstairs, the camera pans on Brahms, whose eyes are seen looking towards the window, and then at the camera. This is the first issue I have of the film. The doll isn't supposed to do that. The doll never did that. In the entire first film, Brahms' eyes never darted without someone being there. And even in the first film, if Brahms moved, it would be after someone has left the room, giving actual Brahms an opportunity to move him. He mainly moved in the first movie when Greta didn't abide by the rules, so Brahms had to remind her or show her the consequences of her actions. His eyes moving by themselves have already broken the idea of the first movie. In the next scene, there's an interaction between Liza and Jude where it goes back and forth, and after Liza leaves the room, the camera focuses on Jude again, and Brahms' head is turned to face Jude instead of looking head on. This again breaks the idea of the first movie, but even though it's not implied at all, in fact the opposite, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt, and just say in between going from focusing on Liza to Jude, there was about a 5-second delay where he turned Brahms' head towards him. Jude and Liza go for a walk in the woods, and Jude is guided by a child's voice to go find more of Brahms' stuff. After Jude finds it, we get jump scared by a dog. This is when Joseph meets and talks to Jude and Liza for the first time. Also, he mistakes them for strangers until they mention they're staying at the guest house. Joseph remarks about them being the new family that moved in like he hadn't seen them, but he saw them yesterday. Jude even directly looked at him. Did he forget what they looked like in 24 hours? Sorry, it's a bit of a silly nitpick, but I just thought it was a bit odd, especially when he was directly outside the front of their house. Joseph introduces himself and his dog Oz as the groundskeeper and neighbour to the family. Oz growls at Brahms, but not much comes from it considering, you know, he's a dog. He can't really say much. Joe walks them back to the house and meets Sean. As the family walk back into the house, we can see that Joe's a little more agitated seeing Brahms as Oz begins to growl again. In the next scene, Liza hears Jude talking to Brahms after storming off from Sean after he made a comment about Liza, which I think was valid for someone with trauma. He says he thinks that Liza uses Jude and his experience so that Liza doesn't have to talk about her experience with the robbery, and Sean believes that's unhealthy. But I believe she just storms off to further a plot. Liza and Sean hear Jude talking to Brahms, but when they directly talk to him, they don't get a verbal response from him. They believe if they keep Brahms around, Jude will open up more and more and get back to where he was before the incident. Liza has another nightmare about the incident. In that nightmare she sees Brahms, and I just wanted to mention this because Brahms goes from a blank stare to a slight smile, and it is so good. I don't know exactly what that effect is called, but I find that one of the creepiest things you can do with an inanimate object that has a face. It definitely kicked my fight or flight response for a second. It especially works more because there's no music in the scene, just pure silence. At breakfast, Jude writes down a list of rules for Brahms that must be followed. There's 10 rules in total, but they seem to be different as the rules in the first movie were to be followed so that actual Brahms could be kept entertained and fed whilst living in the walls. Later on, Jude gets sent to his room for cutting up a teddy bear and blaming it on Brahms, but his parents don't believe him. After Jude leaves, Liza sits in another room and the TV turns on, with the remote lying next to Brahms.
Hey dog, get some ice cream? Only a spoonful.
Liza then goes to Jude and blames him for turning on the TV. Jude said it wasn't him since he didn't come out, and Liza says he can spend the rest of his day in his room. I know it's a generic trope of, oh, the parents don't know the doll can move and act on its own until the second or third act, but from when the TV turns on to Liza reacting it, there is no way Jude could have put the remote next to Brahms and then run to his room without being seen. Liza then finds the door locked to Jude's room, only to find out that Jude wasn't in his room, and when the door opens, Brahms is sitting on the chair. At this point in the film, for the characters, it must be so blatantly obvious that the doll is sentient and moving around. The door doesn't lock by itself from the inside. In the first film, Brahms moves, but the house was so big it would have been easier to move the doll before anyone saw. And there's no obvious or secret way into the walls nearby, so if someone was living in the walls here too, they'd be caught super easily. The next day, as Jude and Brahms are sitting on a swinging bench, Joe comes up and greets them. Joe then starts talking to Brahms directly, hinting that he knows more about the doll's past, whilst in the same scene, Liza is looking up the history of the estate they're living on. It mentions Brahms living in the walls, so it's been made known either by Greta and Malcolm or whoever found the property afterwards. As Liza comes outside to see what Joe wants, he mentions he's looking for Oz, but when Liza says she hasn't seen him, Joe says he has a good idea of where he is anyway, indicating he probably just saw Jude with Brahms and wanted to talk to Brahms or make Jude aware of the fact that there is more to Brahms than he knows. At night, Liza sneaks into Jude's room to find the model number on Brahms, as she was looking into the doll model numbers the day before, as well as the history of the estate. As she shines her torch away from Brahms' face and focusing on where the model number might be, Brahms' face morphs into a smile until the torch shines on him again. I feel that this time it's not as well done since there's eerie music to go with it, which isn't as impactful in my opinion. As Liza finds the number and is done with Brahms, there's a cheap jump scare where flies fly out of Brahms' mouth and then Jude wakes up along with Sean. This jump scare seems really out of place because why? It's as if there's a hallucination, but why hallucination? It's not as if Liza's been hallucinating things before and she's not in a nightmare, so this makes no sense. Yes, she suspects there's something up with Brahms, but the jump scare was just not needed. And why flies coming out of his mouth? That seems a bit out of left field. Doesn't really fit with anything to do with the doll. Next day, Liza finds drawing in Jude's notebook of murders that Jude might commit, whilst wearing the doll mask similar to Brahms. It's unclear if Brahms or Jude drew these, but I'm more inclined to believe Jude did them because when we see Jude wearing a suit similar to Brahms behind Liza, he looks a bit cold towards her, as if looking through his private journal, but hey, I think it's reasonable for a parent to see what her child's been doing in his journal. That's his only way of communicating outside of nodding or shaking his head. Liza and Jude butt heads at dinner since Liza refused to give Brahms any food, breaking one of the rules. In retaliation, whilst Liza is out of the room, the table flips over, which looks like Jude did it as Brahms just sits there. Liza and Sean argue to get rid of Brahms as it is causing Jude to have more violent tendencies, even though as the audience, we already know it's Brahms. In the next scene, Joe comes across Oz's corpse, which was illustrated as one of the drawings in Jude's journal, before it's supposedly ripped out. Next, Liza and Sean go to speak to Jude about getting rid of Brahms, but find out he's not in his room and has gone into the woods with the journal on his bed saying, "You should have followed the rules." Liza and Sean search for Jude and find him in the house from the first movie, wearing the mask that Brahms wore in the first film. As they're leaving the house, Joe tells Liza and Sean about the events of the first film and gives us a couple of extra details. First off, it's confirmed that Brahms definitely killed Emily before the house set fire, and secondly, Brahms did not die long after Greta and Malcolm escaped. Whilst Liza and Sean were planning to get rid of Brahms, Jude starts talking again, so they decide to keep it if that helps him talk more. Some of Sean's family arrive at the house, and when they meet Jude, he's sitting in a chair looking almost identical to Brahms, becoming more like him. And I think that when Liam, Jude's uncle, asked what the doll's name was, and Jude responded in an English accent, akin to how Brahms and the Hilshers were English, taking a trait from Brahms again. Jude and his cousins go outside, and whilst his cousin Sophie likes the doll and gets along with Jude, his other cousin Will rips into him about being mental and just not being a nice person. You could give the benefit of the doubt that he's just saying what his parents said in a meaner manner unintentionally, but then he just starts breaking croquet equipment like an arsehole. Then after Will steals Sophie's hat, Jude and Will tug over it. Jude, seeing Brahms, gives in a let's go, causing Will to fall on a spike that he caused earlier by breaking croquet equipment. Once the parents quickly catch wind of what's just happened, they rush off to the hospital, leaving only Jude and Liza at the house. And you know what? I don't feel bad for Will. If I was Jude's dad and I believed the doll was alive, I still would have blamed it all on Will. He created the spike and the tug of war on Sophie's hat. Everything that happened to him was his fault. Rest in piss, bozo. Later that night, Jude confesses that he can't control Brahms anymore as he's getting stronger and can't let go of him. He also says that Brahms threatens to kill Liza and Sean if he and Jude don't move into the big house. As Liza looks into the mysteries of the Hillshire estate, seeing it's happened before, we get Sean sitting in hospital talking to a stranger about the estate, essentially reiterating what Liza is looking at on the internet. But as the stranger goes on about the multiple incidents, he mentions that the current owner of the house is Joe, and people refer to him as Crazy Joe, which causes Sean to run out of the hospital. Liza then sees that Jude and Brahms are missing, and just as she's about to step outside to look for them, Joe comes from out of nowhere pointing his shotgun at Liza. Joe and Liza sit down, with the shotgun still pointed at her. Joe reassures her that Jude is safe, and Liza asks Joe why he's at the house. Joe explains how Brahms gets attached to a person step by step, and also reveals that Joe was the one who put Brahms back together at the end of the first film. Joe also states that he buried Brahms due to Brahms' wishes to be done so that Jude can find him, as Brahms told Joe that Jude will inevitably find him. Once Joe tells Liza that Jude's in the big house, she pours candle wax on Joe's face and then knocks him out with his shotgun whilst he's distracted. With Joe's shotgun in hand, Liza storms into the big house and finds Jude in the basement with Brahms, wearing the mask again. Liza is able to get Brahms off of Jude and sets him down, but in doing so, puts down the shotgun which Jude picks up and aims it at Liza. As Jude tells Liza that she and Sean can't protect Jude from bad people, Sean enters the room crouching behind Brahms so that Jude can't see him. Sean then smashes Brahms with the mullet and Jude comes back to his senses. This really irks me, but we're near the end of the movie, so I'll save it for afterwards. After the family reconnect, Joe comes into the basement exclaiming that now they've attacked Brahms, he'll be punished. And then we see Brahms sit up, face broken off, leaving an alien-looking creature left as things begin to rattle around them. Then, Joe is lifted off the floor by Brahms' now telekinetic powers. Brahms then opens the door to the fireplace, knocking Joe out and throwing Liza and Sean to the floor. As the couple get back up, Jude is once again holding Brahms, but in a twist of events, throws Brahms into the open fire and closes it behind him.
Michael! Don't leave me here! Michael! Michael!
In the next scene, it shows that the family has moved back home to London, going back to how things were. Once Jude goes to bed, he gets up and reveals he kept the mask of Brahms. He puts it on, wishes Brahms a good night and says they'll be happy there, they referring to the family, if they stick to the rules. And that's the movie over. And I have a lot of questions. Before posing all my questions about the ridiculousness of this movie, I did want to say I did enjoy bits of the movie. As I mentioned before, the slow deadpan to smile was cool. I would have liked it the other time if they just didn't add the eerie music. I think that sort of depletes the effect. I thought the premise and dynamic of the family was quite good. I like the idea that they moved to the house because of the robbery, and it gives reason to keep Brahms around. Whilst I personally didn't think the chemistry was as good as Greta and Malcolm's from the first film, I still liked it between the main three characters, and whilst the film had the same budget as the first one, I feel like the quality was upped and there was more entertaining storylines outside of Brahms this time around. Either that or my dopamine receptors have been fried by Subway Surfers gameplay and Family Guy funny moments. I think also adding more characters helped flesh out some of the characters and backgrounds, like the extended family, even if they were only there for about 5 minutes. Although there were a lot of cheap jump scares used solely for shock value, and whilst I enjoyed parts of the film, I couldn't help but just feel agitated when Brahms moved, and without any assistance. I don't mind a bit of difference, but it just completely undermines the idea behind the first film and becomes more a generic possessed doll story. The hallucinations that Liza is having come out of nowhere. Yes, she has nightmares and that's fine, that makes logical sense, but where's the correlation for Liza seeing a hallucination of Brahms just for a cheap jump scare for the audience? And what about the pages in the book? It was implied that Liza hallucinated the pages or that Brahms ripped them out. This one's more of a nitpick for me, but why not just say outright if the pages were ripped out or not? Okay, there's a lot to unpack with this question. I don't understand why Jude acts the way he does in the final act of the film and why he snaps out of it after Sean smashes the doll in the basement and then actually Jude becomes evil again at the end of the film. What's with the lack of consistency? Unless Jude was putting up a front at the end of the movie, but that seemed genuine that he snapped out of Brahms' influence on him. In the film they mention how Brahms influences children to kill friends and family members per the doll's wishes, and why does Jude wear the doll mask to signify his alignment with Brahms? In the first movie, for the sake of plot in the second movie, I will give in and say Brahms killed Emily per the doll's wishes. But after that you're telling me Brahms either didn't kill for the next 30 years, or if he did kill previous nannies, I doubt it was on behalf of the doll. If Brahms did kill his nannies, it was because they either didn't follow the rules, or Brahms the person didn't like them. And speaking of rules, in the second movie, the rules are made by Brahms so that Jude and Brahms can stay together and kill the parents if they don't abide the rules just because. In the first film the rules are in place so that Brahms the person can live a somewhat comfortable life inside the walls by having entertainment, even if it's in a weird way, having food be given to him, and to stop rodents from getting inside his living space. Also in the first film, Brahms only wears the mask because he's covering his burned face that he got from the fire when the house was originally burnt down. Yes, Brahms has a connection with the doll, which is why the mask resembles the doll, whereas Jude only wears the mask because of the influence Brahms is pushing onto him. This is where the difference in wearing the mask and her influence begins. In the first film, Cole breaks the doll and Brahms is still the same person he was at the start of the film and before. But when the doll breaks for Jude, he snaps out of it, seemingly no under the influence. Also, when Sean smashes the doll, Joe is punished because of that by Brahms, whereas in the first film, Brahms is seemingly not punished by the doll because in the first film, the doll is just a doll, not a living sentient being. Speaking of influence, Brahms for the events of the first film is never under the influence of Brahms. He only kills Cole because he poses as a threat to Greta, who Brahms has an obsessive nature over. And Brahms nearly killed Malcolm because he saw competition for Greta in Malcolm. The only reason he tried to kill Greta in the end is because she tried to kill him. It was just his fight or flight response kicking in. Brahms listened and followed Greta's orders right up until she stabbed him. And to end this question off, why is it, if the doll existed long before Brahms was born, why do they share a name? Was that just pure coincidence they shared a name, or was it the original movie intended for the doll to be a coping mechanism or mediator for the Hilshers to talk to their son and just leave it at that? My biggest question is, what the fuck is up with the doll now? Why does it look like that and why does it exist? It's not in the first film. Joe says it started growing after he put them back together, which was at the end of the first film. But if that's what's been going on this whole time, how come there was nothing in the Brahms doll when Cole smashed it the first time? I understand something has to be inside Brahms for him to move now, but why? Why make it possessed in the first place? The entire idea of the first film was to think that the doll was possessed, but it turns out the doll wasn't possessed at all. It was just a creepy doll being moved by an actual person. And now the film just turns that good idea upside down by just saying, oh yeah, no, the doll is possessed now. Did you guys not catch that in the first film? The first film did it cleverly, and when no one was around to see it, or if we did see it move, we saw it from the doll's point of view. So we never actually saw the doll move in real time or from a third person perspective. I know because of the type of film this is, they wanted to make the inside of Brahms look creepy as possible. But just what is it? Is it an alien or something? It looks like it belongs in one of those one-off Doctor Who episodes where they completely embrace the horror aspect. I just have nothing to say because aside from Joe saying that it is growing inside of the doll, there is no other explanation. Why is it that Brahms has powers now? my brain can't even think of why anymore. Was there a need for him to be able to use the Force now, and not in the first film? This question links back to the one about the thing inside the Brahms doll. Just what's the point? Joe mentions that Brahms told him that Jude was going to find Brahms eventually, and that the events of the movie would take place. I just wonder how though. How was Brahms, who was just a doll, able to know that the family were going to move to the estate and Jude would find the doll? I don't really see Brahms browsing through news reports and subreddits about any robberies and people looking to move to quieter areas, so there's a fair chance that Brahms just knew? On top of force powers, I guess he also has foresight. Very cool movie. This question's pretty obvious. For money. I feel like this is a less exaggerated version of Todd Phillips' version of the Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. After the first Joker movie, Phillips was not ready or wanted to make another Joker movie. Joker could have been a standalone film, and it should have been, but because of how well it did, Warner Bros. Wanted a sequel. Phillips then allegedly sabotaged the making of the movie either due to malice or incompetence. I think the same goes for this sequel, not because of the malice or incompetence, but when you're forced to make another film you probably don't want to do, when you can't do much with the characters already established, you're only given so little options, and they all lead to retconning parts of the original. I tried thinking of ways to make the film work, like having Jude and Liza suffer trauma from the robbery and Brahms helping Jude work through his trauma was a good idea, but there's just no way of making this film a horror film with that premise without ignoring some key facts from the first film. Before I conclude this video, I just want to say that The Boy isn't the only film franchise that has done this. Whilst I mentioned the sequel to The Joker after hearing it's a terrible movie, I couldn't say that it ruins the first movie or if it retcons it, because I haven't seen it and I still don't intend to watch it. I just know about some of the behind the scenes issues. One sequel that ruins its first movie is the Cube franchise. You may have seen Pyrocynical make a video about the film and its sequel, and it's a really good video on how you mess up a sequel and completely lose what makes the first film so good. Because of that video, I went to watch the original Cube film, and it's so disturbing in a good way, and the way the story plays out is so amazing, but based off the video, I didn't even try to watch the sequel because of how terrible it looks. Another example is the sequel to Netflix's The Platform. Again, I haven't seen the sequel, but I watched the first film and didn't get around to watching the sequel because I just thought there's no need. The first film's good enough by itself, why does a sequel need to be made? So at the end of this video, what have we learned? I'd say I enjoyed the first film, and I think it's a good watch if you enjoy horror films and have some spare time. After so many dull horror films before it, I'm glad it subverts the boring common stereotypical trope of the doll being possessed, only to be entirely undone in the second movie. As much as I've ripped into the second film, I don't blame the people behind it, aside from the executives and producers. I doubt the crew wanted to make another one, but when they had to, they just rolled the dice and went with what they could. As I said, I don't think there's a way to make a sequel without treading on some of the first film's plot points. And aside from the glaring problems in the second film, I will say I wasn't outright infuriated by watching the film. I had my expectations for rewatching the movie, but I came out of it enjoying it more than I remembered the first time round. There are some things it does better than the first, but also can completely topple over by overdoing it. Like the slow plan to smile from Brahms. I will keep mentioning that. I loved that bit a little too much. It was just the subtlety of it, but then I think about the amount of jump scares that are used for cheap thrills really just don't do the movie justice on top of the writing. I wouldn't recommend the second movie. Whilst as I said it's a good watch, I think there's just too much going wrong for it that it just can't make up for its mistakes to make it enjoyable. And as much as I want to say this is the end for the Boy franchise, there are rumours of William Brent Bell returning to do a third film. For the time being, they're just rumours, but I just hope it stays that way, because after where I went with the sequel, how'd you go even further off the deep end? It's like walking the plank and then sinking to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Anyways, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button or Brahms will break through your walls. If you think I missed anything, let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, that's it. See you around.